the city. But at the heart of what Aaron and I want to talk about just briefly tonight, and Luca, maybe, is about what it means to be a connector. What is at the heart of connection and this thing we call networking, which these guys and you all do so well. It's not that we've been doing this longer. It's not that we have manifested some framework that works for everybody. But we've been doing this in the city long enough and around the world long enough that we think there's some things you might want to know about. So the first thing we'll talk about is this. We're going to talk about networking to a transaction as connecting is to a relationship. And you nailed it, right? So LinkedIn Local, as we got to know about what LinkedIn Local is about, it's about the personal connections that you all make. It's not about the transaction. And there's this kind of dirty affiliation to networking. I want something from you. There's the business cards, like that person was in that crowd too. And I want to, oh, hey, here's my card, my resume. It's not about that. So I guess the first thing we'll say, and you're going to hear this as a through line in the next 10 minutes, stop networking. Stop it. It's not working. Connecting is working, and that's where relationships are born. All right? So we're just going to riff on 6 different ideas. I'm going to suggest the maxim it's about who you know, right? Yeah? Petronavi? You're like, no, it's not, because it's up there. I'm going to suggest it's actually not about who you know. I'm going to suggest it's about who you know, who knows who you need to know. So think about that for a second. It's not about who you know, it's about who you know, who knows who you need to know. And I see some head nodding, maybe because that sounds kind of cool, but at the end of the day, yeah, I know Aaron, I know Amy, I know Steve, I know Elizabeth, I know Tim, but they know a lot of people who I probably should know. It's not about them knowing me, it's about them knowing my story and knowing what I'm talking about so that they can connect me. Connection, not a transaction, right? So first thing is, it's not about who you know. It's about who you know, who knows, who you need to know.
The next part that we want to talk about is the expectation that you have going into these events or even going into building a network around you. And the biggest thing that we could possibly do, in my estimation tonight, is to break the notion of it being an equation. You hear some of these ideas that we're reciprocal, I give and then I take, I scratch your back, you scratch my back. We need to completely break that paradigm. With your friends, with your closest family members, you don't keep a scoreboard. You don't keep track of, oh, I did this 3 times for mom, and now she's gonna drive me to the airport or something like that. That's not what love is. That's not what connecting is. So we need to absolutely flush that from our minds, the idea that there is an equation or a scoreboard when it comes to any of this networking. Connecting isn't like that.
Third thing, do we have any marketers in the room? Marketers? A couple hands going up, so I'm going to use your vernacular. Luca, what's that? What he just said was, hair breaker? Inbound marketing, right? Inbound marketing. There's so much, or is it outbound? So much about networking, I equate to this kind of marketing vernacular, which is we come to networking events. Thanks, sir. Because we want to put ourselves out and we'll talk about our story and market ourselves. We have brands, right? What if I told you I think the paradigm is radically shifting to go from outbound marketing to inbound marketing when it comes to connecting? So how do you do that? Well, social media. Create a brand for yourself. You're putting yourself out there. You're creating this digital universe for yourself so that people actually want to know who you are. Aaron, is that better interesting or interested? I don't know, you're going to talk about that in a second. Suffice to say, think about networking, think about connecting as inbound marketing for yourself. No more of the outbound marketing, putting myself out there, of course, but you would come to you, so you actually take the burden off of yourself, get the burden away from yourself. Have people come to you because you're really, really interesting, because you all really are.
So another aspect of this, and what breaks down in that picture that we showed at the beginning with all the different thought bubbles and talk bubbles, is that that's an environment that's built for an extrovert. An introvert goes and they're in their own head, they're in that thought bubble, they're afraid of the expectations or the friction or the other components of getting into that room and saying hello to someone. But what will reinforce, and we've seen this happen personally with friends that we know that are straight out of the box, straight out of the Myers-Briggs definition introverts, that they feel much more comfortable when it is one-to-one. They're much more comfortable getting a cup of coffee. They're much more meeting someone and having a conversation face-to-face, as opposed to trying and break in and come up with some one-liner like you're at a bar to start a networking experience. So when you have this frame and you're genuinely trying to meet with someone, that creates a difference for you whether you're extroverted or introverted.
Let's say it again. Networking. That shit isn't working. It's not working. I'm sorry. I need to learn about it. I know we talk about this as a networking event, and Amy described it perfectly. We're coming here, because it's LinkedIn, and LinkedIn's all about networking, and it is. I cannot impress upon you enough the importance of you think about the connection mindset versus networking, because you're going to take by surprise. Because when you come to these events, it's like, oh, it's a networking event. And why are they here? Well, they're here to network. But if you're here to connect, that's a conversation waiting to be had. That's a story waiting to be told. All I'm saying is stop networking, start connecting, because it's not working. Networking is not working.
What if we're here to get away from the kids?
Yeah, that's beer and we're bringing.
Yeah. Sorry.
Hey, just remember, it's along the years about it.
Yeah.
I'm totally open to eliminating networking from any of the conversations. I love it.
So, can I say real quick, one thing? I heard this really cool term on Twitter, actually. Not networking, it's net weaving. New word. You're weaving stories together, you're weaving ideas together. It's another way to stop saying networking. It's net weaving.
Tied to the same idea that Larry talked about of outbound versus inbound connections, this idea of you're not interesting if you're not interested. And it's very funny that Colin Hung actually came here tonight because he's all the way from Canada for Thrival and actually made it out to this event tonight, which is super exciting. And the coolest thing about Colin, the reason I would bring him up in a presentation like this, is that the last time he came to Pittsburgh, we were sitting at a bar and he said, so Aaron, what's going on with Piper, the thing you're working on? And he didn't say it in an offhanded way. He didn't say it in a, well, I'm gonna say this transactionally so that then I can then talk about my thing. He was genuinely interested. The body language was leaning in. The eye contact was direct. The tonality indicated a sincere interest in what it is that I was working on. And it's not that he expected to be shouted out at some obscure LinkedIn local meetup the next time he came to Pittsburgh. He didn't do it with that intention. He was genuinely interested, and that makes him more interesting. I'm more excited to talk about his weekly chat that he has on Twitter. I'm more excited to talk about the fact that he's here for Thrival from Canada and all the other interesting things that you can ask him about later. But that very nature of being interested in other people will inherently make you more interesting.
Home stretch. Last thing, and then we're going to get off and actually try this. So, what does it mean to narrate other people? Actually, I think you saw Aaron do that really, really well. We like stories. Ever since we were kids, we love hearing stories as kids. What have you read to? We like to go to TED Talks and listen to people tell stories. Well, what if I told you that when you're at connectioning events or net meeting events, not networking events, if you do more of this, if you do more narration, if you narrate other people, it's not about you. It's about me, her, him, and you. If you do that, you're different. Because everyone's going to come and talk about myself. This is what I do. Hey, I'm Jason. I do a really cool job. This is what I do. I don't care. If you're going out of the way to introduce me to this guy, Terry, he's a pretty interesting guy. So narration, how does this stuff work? Hey, this is my friend Aaron. Aaron does a lot of things in the city because you want to know somebody who really can go deep and ask really, really smart questions about what's happening in the city and where to go get things done. Aaron's the guy to get it done. You can talk to Aaron.
This is my friend Larry Joya. I met Larry doing one of my first podcasts ever, and in addition to being a PwC consultant, in addition to teaching people how to kayak, the most important thing that you can know is that he has a tremendous heart and an even bigger network of connections that he can introduce you to very willingly, not without any sort of expectation of anything in return. You guys should meet Larry.
So, guess we'll try that. Yeah, this isn't about us talking at you. We gave you 6 things that we like to think about. It works for us. We hope you would take something away that works for you. As we've come to learn, some of you have been to these things. It's our first one, by the way. Thank you for having us. You apparently do introductions. I think we should, actually, because this is why we're here. Because 50 people in the room, I really want to talk to her, but I didn't get a chance because my son was crying. So, let's try this.
So who here came with a friend? Raise your hand if you came with a friend. All right, now we know exactly who cannot partner with the person right next to them. You need to find someone new, introduce yourself. We're gonna give you a couple minutes to connect, to tell each other a little bit about yourselves, ask a question going a little bit deeper, getting more detail about that person. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna come back around and very quickly, the same way that Larry and I succinctly, in a sentence or two, explained the person, introduce this person and narrate them to the rest of the group. Cool?
Come down here. Come on, let's go. We got it.
Let's go. Here's what I think is so freaking cool about what we just did. Who here can relate to the feeling of going in to a networking event and selling yourself, promoting yourself, and to some degree kind of that makes you feel icky, like I have to push myself onto someone or some degree, right? Can anyone relate to that? I'm seeing a few nods, some hands. The beauty of the exercise that we just went through made you feel kind of good. You got to talk about someone else. You got to use your own memory, call on, show how active a listener you were. And that's the magic of narrating others. Instead of saying, look at me, instead of being promotional, sleazy, these things that, if we're to some degree empathetic, we want to avoid being at all times. By narrating others, we're actually not only opening the door, but making ourselves feel a lot better. And in this world where we're talking about company cultures and internal team cultures, this is more of a meta culture, the working world writ large, that we want to perpetuate. A culture where we narrate others and open doors for others because everyone is going to feel a lot better.
My takeaway from this, I don't know what you guys think, I'm seriously stoked right now. I don't know, I heard laughing, I heard cheering, and that wasn't instigated. Like, that was as human as it gets. Hey, that was felt, it can be engineered. It was a little engineered. But like, come on, you don't just raise your hand if you're feeling like heart right now. I'm feeling heart right now. I want to talk to like some people right now and just like, tell me more about yourself. I really hope you guys feel that. Yes, we engineered it, but it shouldn't have to be engineered to the point, right? The last thing I'll leave you with is something Aaron and I talk a lot about, and we talk a lot about. If there's anything you take away other than meeting somebody new tonight, we're all just dots. We're all just dots in the universe. And there's 4 letters that I want you to remember. And if you forget these, then I don't know how you follow this. Luca came up with this on the way here. Okay? Very simple. A, B, C, D. Always be connecting the dots. That's what it's all about. Thank you guys.